So every once in a while, Nintendo will sell refurbished products on their website, and they're continuing to do this into 2021. And in this particular instance, I was able to pick up a Nintendo 2DS for $50. Now, these things seem to sell out pretty quickly on Nintendo's website, so once they kind of get advertised, you want to pick one up as quickly as you can. But I was fortunate enough to get a 2DS, and I thought it would be a cool idea on the channel to show you guys what you can do with a 2DS in 2021. These systems are still very desirable, they still work extremely well, and there's some really cool things that you can do with a 2DS that I'm going to show you guys on the channel today. So first things first, let's go ahead and open up this model. So this is the refurbished 2DS, and you get the power adapter, and you get all the information that you would normally get with a 2DS if you just bought it as new, and you get the instructions and the AR cards, not interested in that. And of course the system itself. So this is the system itself, and I gotta tell you, I have a refurbished unit from GameStop, which is a lot more knocked around and beaten up than this. This is actually in really great condition. It looks really, it looks brand new. I'm looking at this thing at the back, and I can't notice any type of issues at all. Now, when you buy a refurbished unit from Nintendo, you tend to get something that looks really, really nice. It's quite clean. And now this system has been factory reset and everything like that. So we're going to set everything up. So what can you do with a 2DS in 2021? Well, the eShop still works. You can still buy and download games. Physical games are available, and although they are slowly starting to creep up in price, the market really hasn't latched onto the 3DS stuff yet. I think we're still very much into the GameCube era and PlayStation 2 era of games, but I will tell you that 3DS games are starting to creep up in price. So if you are thinking about a collection of 3DS physical games, it may be a really good time now to start looking at those. Now, a $50 2DS handheld by itself represents excellent value for money. 3DS games are still relatively cheap, and you can have a lot of fun playing the system. But as always, there is a bigger and better world to unlock by tapping into the world of homebrew, and we're going to take a look at how to do that on the Nintendo 2DS. Now, the first thing I'm going to recommend to anyone that has a 2DS, 3DS, or any variant of the 3DS line is to modify it for homebrew. The cost to do this is $0, and if anyone tries to sell you a modding service, then you should know you're probably getting ripped off. So how do you go about the business of modding your 2DS? Well, like I always say, making video tutorials on homebrew modding of any system is problematic, because they almost certainly go out of date as soon as new exploits or simpler methods are discovered, and the 2DS is no exception. Homebrew modding a 2DS a few years ago is completely different to the steps required in 2021, where it literally can be done in about 10 minutes. Now, before we proceed, standard disclaimer. Modding your 2DS for homebrew is safe, and I've modded many of them over the years without incident. However, there is always a chance that you could brick your device. So if you aren't confident or you're not sure about it, then do not proceed. But for those that do, fortunately, there is an updated website known as 3ds.hacks.guide that offers step-by-step instructions on how to mod your 2DS, and indeed any handheld in the 3DS line. You'll need to copy files over to your SD card, reboot, install some stuff, take out your SD card, copy more files to it, then install more stuff on the 2DS. But the end result of this will be the installation of two things, Boot9 Strap and Luma 3DS. Boot9 Strap is the latest boot ROM exploit that replaces the older ARM9 loader hacks. It not only runs earlier in the boot process, but it also includes better protection against bricks if something goes wrong. Luma 3DS, which you've probably heard me talk about, is a custom firmware and isn't a replacement. Rather, it patches the system software that's already running on the fly with features to allow homebrew to run by removing signature checks on the device. Once installed, you can simply launch it at any time by holding down L, down, and select. Now, many people get confused about homebrew on devices and how they actually download and install them. Fortunately, on the 2DS, it's really simple to do. There is a universal installer that with an internet connection can provide access to a homebrew store. And this is really the only application you need to install, and this can be done using a tool known as FBI. FBI should be installed if you followed the 3ds.hacks guide. The main purpose of FBI is to install CIA files. Yes, I'm serious, which allows for the install title to appear on the home menu. It's the preferred method for ease of use. But you don't have to use a CIA file, you can use the traditional homebrew launcher that will have the exact same effect as installing the CIA file. Anyway, once you've installed the universal installer, you can now browse, install, and launch any homebrew that's available, provided that you have an internet connection to your 2DS. Not only that, if the homebrew that you're installing needs additional files that aren't part of the install due to, say, legal issues, it will let you know what you need to install for it to work. And I most definitely recommend this app to anyone that wants to use homebrew on the 2DS. But let's move on. There is so much that you can do with a homebrew modded 2DS. And I've covered many things in previous episodes, and I don't necessarily just want to rehash the same stuff. Instead, let's quickly summarize what's possible in the world of homebrew on the Nintendo 2DS. Now, many of you are going to ask about playing backups on your 2DS system, and of course you can do this. While I'm not going to tell you where to download ROMs from, there is really a simple way to back up your physical games on your 2DS using a tool known as God Mode. This application will set up for you if you followed the guide that I mentioned earlier. Simply power on your 2DS, but hold down the start button, and this will load up God Mode 9, which is a Swiss Army knife with a lot of different tools that have many uses. And one of those is backing up 3DS physical games. Simply insert your 3DS cartridge and then select backup to CIA. This will rip the contents to a .CIA file, which you can then use FBI to install, completely eliminating the need for the cartridge so it can be preserved. There are also so many other cool things you can do with a modded 2DS that I can't possibly cover all here, but I do recommend stepping into the world and seeing what's possible. Now, some of you probably aren't comfortable with homebrew modding your 2DS for different reasons, because there is a few steps and a few hoops that you have to jump through in order to get there. But there are some other alternatives to getting homebrew running on your 2DS system that are a lot less tedious. Now, some of you may not be comfortable with homebrew modding your 2DS device, but you still may want to take advantage of playing backup games in homebrew. And for this, there are some other options, although they are more limited in scope. The first is the R4i Gold. This is a flash card that can accept anything up to a 32GB SD card that can run ROMs, emulators, and homebrew. However, keep in mind that this is limited to only Nintendo DS software, and you can only run DS games. Unfortunately, it will not run any 3DS native software. But even still, the R4 Gold is a pretty cool device that's simple for beginners to set up and start using as long as you are aware of the limitations. And finally, there's the 208-in-1 multi-cartridge that are being sold on places like Amazon. These usually retail for about $25 and are nothing but a bunch of DS ROMs installed on an SD card that's removable. The single purpose of these is to play DS games. On closer inspection, it's using the Ace 3DS, which was a popular 3DS flash card at the time, but instead has pre-installed ROMs. To be honest though, I'm not entirely sure why Nintendo hasn't attempted to stop the sale of these, but it's also true that Nintendo's not really interested in blocking DS flash cards any longer. In fact, they haven't in many years. The 208-in-1 also does pretty much the same job as the R4i Gold card, except that it has lower compatibility with some games. It's also $10 cheaper than the R4i Gold, which usually retails for around $35. There's also a newer 500-in-1 cartridge that was released, but I haven't had a chance to take a look at this one yet. But in conclusion, no matter what option you choose, you can really extend the life of the 2DS via modding yourself or picking up a flash cart or a combination of both. You can't beat that $50 price for a refurbed handheld that will give you tons of enjoyment, and with the homebrew scene continuing to surprise, I can categorically recommend an old Nintendo 2DS handheld to everyone. Now, I still think a $50 2DS from the Nintendo store is a great deal in 2021. As you've seen, you can do some really awesome stuff with the device. Now, before I go, I want to let you guys know that I will be giving away the very same 2DS plus the R4i Gold card plus the 208-in-1 that you saw in this episode to one lucky winner. And in order to get into the competition, all you need to do is click on the competition link in the description below. Get yourself entered and good luck. I will be drawing the winner in about 2 weeks, and I will ship to anyone in the world. So if you're outside of the US, feel free to get entered and good luck. Now, I'm going to leave it here for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.